Judgment Day is in the clubhouse, and Damian Priest warns none of them are to get involved, even if Drew comes out. So, famous last words. Damian Priest and Seth Rollins. I was a little surprised that this was not ending the show, because especially after Drew won, I thought like that will be your end to the show, but they opted to go a different way, which I can understand based on how things went. So this match, I thought they were having a very good match for the beginning portions here. We see Rollins with a buckle bomb, and then Priest comes back with a power bomb of his own, and then these spinning roundhouse kicks that are landing. And Seth counters a South of Heaven with a pedigree attempt, but he takes the back body drop. Rollins then rebounds with a stomp. That gets a 2 count. Razor's Edge by Priest for a 2. And then we have Rollins going to the top, hits the superplex, and he's trying for the follow-up Falcon Arrow, but it's fought by Priest. Finally, Seth hits it, and we get a 1, 2, and Priest does not kick out, and everything just stands still here because the crowd is all buzzing as though Seth should be winning this match, and the ref doesn't know what to do to avoid counting 3. And so then we just cut to Drew's music, and he comes down, and everyone's attention is now on him, and he announces he is cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase, and it turns into a triple threat. And as he sets up for the Claymore, Seth nails him with a super kick, and then there's a future shock hit to Seth, so that takes Rollins out. Priest cuts off the Claymore, and Drew nearly takes a South of Heaven, but he stops, hits a Claymore to Priest. When CM Punk comes out through the crowd, place goes nuts, and he nails Drew with all of these chair shots and grabs the belt and nails Drew with the belt, sits on the desk with the title, and then a South of Heaven leads to Damian Priest retaining in 15 minutes and 45 seconds. A lot going on here, so much so that this guy who probably spent $1,000 on this front row seat needed to capture it with a selfie.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Hey, and I think that's our friend Donovan standing next to him.
Oh my goodness, that is Donovan.
Wow.
I think.
Check it out.
That, yeah. He wanted to take it in real time. He don't want to leave his phone to tell him what happened.
Yeah, a lot happening in this one. I don't know what we should even talk about first. Should we talk about the match itself first?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think everyone's gonna kind of lament just the non-kick out at the end, because I did think the match was going very well. I think it was also one of those matches where, especially once Drew won, no one was going to take anything too definitive until something happened, because everything was teased for such. And realistically, this played out how I think everyone thought it would once Drew won the briefcase. I think the idea of Drew trying to cash in and getting thwarted again by Punk was a logical outcome, and that's what they went with here. They didn't try to swerve what the thought was out there.
No, but I did think that they would drag it out a bit more into either a lengthier story or just using it as a device to create several more teases and memorable moments leading to the eventual thwarting. Instead, I guess we should just talk about the cash in the whole thing first. And
here's the question I would throw to you, Wei, is that the argument coming out of Clash at the Castle and having Punk screw Drew in Scotland was, well, their program's hot enough, it doesn't need the title.
Yep. The
question out of this one would be, this program's so hot, did it need the Money in the Bank attached to it?
I personally don't think so. The argument, I think, is always when you're doing something like this, especially with a failed cash-in, is that was this a waste opportunity for somebody else, like a Jey Uso, like an LA Knight, like a Chad Gable, who could have used the device to be able to, use it throughout the course of at least several months to elevate their status and to get that much more of a spotlight.
Or even like a defined story for the summer. Like, it doesn't even have to be months. It could just be weeks, if not like the summer.
Yeah.
That was a lot of my thought here, was by the end of this, was this any more heated than this program already was? And no. I'm sure they'll have a great segment with Drew reacting on Monday, and this should likely set up SummerSlam. I think they'd be nuts if Punk is not ready to go at this point.
Yeah.
But that was kind of my thought at the end of this is, okay, it was kind of a replication of last month, and I don't know how much more juice you got out of it. And you did have to give up this storyline device.
What it did convey to me, though, was that they probably already have their title picture set across both men's championships over the next year, and they might not involve anybody on the come up. You know, they might not involve like an LA Knight. They might not involve a Jey Uso or a Chad Gable ascending those ranks. And therefore, that eliminates those options. If you're going to eventually have somebody fail at a cash in anyway, because they don't intend on having anybody cash in successfully, give it to Drew McIntyre and let him fail and give the heat to CM Punk. But I was maybe also a little surprised that they did it so soon. But I could also understand, like, hey, like, why wait, and let's just decide to, like, you know, put it on the pay-per-view. What is it? SummerSlam is not that far away.
4 weeks.
4 weeks, yeah. So I guess the time to do it would have been now if you were going to have Drew fail and to heat up that particular match. It did just feel to me like very exciting, you know, on the evening and certainly in the building, but felt like a little bit of a, you know, creatively, I wonder if like more could have been done with it. I think there's also a lot of criticism of why a character as smart as Drew McIntyre would decide to cash in to make it a three-way without thinking for sure that CM Punk wasn't going to be an element, or at least having enough of a backup plan so that whenever Punk did come out, he would be able to control that somehow. That I think is a bit of a failing of like the way that they, you know, characterize the Drew McIntyre role here.
The spot was also like he took a superplex. It's like, okay, now's my time.
Exactly.
Superplex.
Well, maybe he just saw, hey, like there's a lot of confusion in there. Somebody was supposed to kick out and did it. This is my concussed time. Yeah. Let's also talk about that. Obviously, you know, the botch is unfortunate. I thought the match was going well, but you know, didn't really even hit that level before it was supposed to get there. And it also makes you wonder, like, did they have more match in store before this moment? Because the Falcon Arrow spot usually does not lead to any sort of match. Or was Drew always supposed to, you know, interrupt here? I've seen people speculate that did the music hit late, and was the music supposed to get rid of the kick out? I did also hear Wade Keller say that he heard that Priest was simply supposed to kick out and he forgot to, or just like missed the one count and thought it was a 2 when instead it was a 3. You can tell the look on Damian Priest's face immediately after the spot, and certainly after the match, after the three-way. He was taking it very hard on himself, and Triple H said as much at the press conference.
I mean, I took it like, if you read between the lines of what Paul Levesque was stating, I think that would be the conclusion you drew, is that it was just an error in judgment, and he
put the referee in an impossibly tough spot if that was the case.
Yeah, like, you know, for the longest time, you always hear that, you know, the referees are supposed to call it as a shoot, and like that's great in theory, but in practice, it's a totally different ball game. That when you're talking about this in a live setting such as this is, and it's an unfortunate issue. It's also worth noting they did advertise Damian Priest for the press conference, and he was swapped out in favor of CM Punk. And there were also, I mean, definitely timing issues on this press conference with everyone going long, and this ended up being a 90-minute presser instead of the usual hour. But they did put up, they were advertising Damian Priest at one point, and then it was Punk who ended up in that spot. So yeah, I think this one, and also kind of lost, and granted, I'm sure they'll make a big focus on this on Monday, is the story coming out of this that Seth cannot challenge for this title now, which you can attribute to Punk being the one that, you know, ultimately led to this outcome.
Yeah, and there was a lot of camera direction specific to show Seth Rollins being angry at CM Punk, so they're reigniting that feud using that storyline point in particular.
How many programs does Punk have?
He's got Rollins, he's got Priest. Who else?
I mean, he's
Hangman Page, the Young Bucks. Just, you know, run down the list. But those are two big ones, Rollins and Priest, that he's got coming up.
Yeah, and I mean, for the immediate future, like, Rollins does kind of feel like odd man out here because
for SummerSlam, you mean?
Can't do a rematch with Damian Priest per this storyline unless they do some way out of that stipulation. And I would not be inserting him with Drew and Punk like that after all this time. I think that one generates a singles match, so it makes you wonder where Rollins will be, and maybe he's just kind of hovering over that, and that's going to be for Germany or something, is where Seth is. Like, these 5-match shows, you're not going to have all your main players in play for every single show. Granted, SummerSlam may have a lengthier card.
Yeah. So going into Raw, I'm very curious to see if they make any mention of the kick out or lack thereof, and do they try to explain it somehow in storyline? If so, how can they? Might even just be better to just completely ignore it in this case. And also, do they start the build towards Gunther versus Priest? It also makes me wonder, like,
Well, they hit that one hard right after this. Like, they had a big trailer for SummerSlam. Like, they were starting to promote that one heavily as soon as this match ended.
But does Priest hold on to the title longer than we might expect, just to kind of like maintain this Seth Rollins can't challenge for the championship clause as a storyline point? Because I think we're all assuming, at least I'm assuming, Gunther to beat Priest at SummerSlam. But that takes a bit of the edge away from whatever Seth Rollins has to suffer if it's only a 4 week. Hey, you can't challenge for the championship in 4 weeks.
Yeah. It'll be. I think you should have like some follow up on Monday, and there might be some course correction on how this was executed.
Rollins has to get a rematch. Well, that'll be excuse. This was a very controversial finish. I deserve a rematch.
Quick notes from the press conference.
Yeah, with Levesque, I felt it notable with his clarification of the Damian Priest incident. I thought Levesque came across really well here in like showing, first of all, acknowledging that there was a mistake and basically saying this is live, this is human error, things like this happen, taking ownership and just acknowledging actually what happened here. But then I think also showing great sympathy for Damian Priest, and like specifically, I think taking the audience to sort of like what the mindset of a performer might be after something like that, knowing how hard any of them would be, knowing that that's all they could probably be focusing on. So I thought like he came across like a really great head coach, talking about a star player who just had a bad day on the field. I'm trying to come up with my sports analogies, and